All right, Jimmy Ott along with Bruce Marshall. Time to talk some college football as we do each and every week. Don't forget when you go to the BetRivers, your phone, and bet on the mobile site or on your computer, get extra value this football season with the BetRivers Squares. You can win up to $10,000 in bonus money. Just bet $10 in same-game parlays on any game with the Squares icon to earn a square. Again, went up to $10,000 in bonus money this football season at BetRivers with their Squares games. All right, Brucey, another winning week, 3-2, 8-6 on the season. So let's get right to it. And Iowa State, the gift that keeps on giving. Thank you. I followed you on that one. I had that one as one of my top plays as well. Even a return touchdown couldn't get it over in the Cyhawk series. But now Iowa State travels to a MAC venue here. And Rourke, who went down after a couple of field goal drives against San Diego State in week 0, they come from behind and beat Florida Atlantic last week. Interesting little spot that they would go to a MAC venue there. Iowa State 3.5 and 44. You're looking at the total here.
Yeah, and I think this is talk about the gift that keeps giving. We talk about Iowa and the Big Ten, but Iowa State is just as much an under team, I think, as Iowa is, and we saw that again last week. But I mean, there are some reasons, and we talked about this before the Cyhawk game last week. That unfortunate the gambling scandal there cost some players at Iowa State, including Hunter Deckers, the quarterback, who is still away from the team. And for this year's team, this is a guy that Matt Campbell needed because he did have experience at quarterback. He posted good numbers last year. They just lost a lot of close games, but they don't have that this year. They've had to go with Rocco Beck, the redshirt freshman, and the numbers are not good. He can't throw the ball downfield, really. You saw some of that last week against Iowa, and they are not scoring much. They only gained 250 yards even in the first game against Northern Iowa when the defense also scored a touchdown for them. So this offense is just not producing much. And Ohio, it is sort of rare to go to a MAC team, though Campbell has done that before. But this is a good MAC team. We've talked about Ohio before. We talked about them in our preseason previews with Paul Stone back in the summer. And Rourke, yes, he did come back last week from that concussion, and they won a game. But look at the score. I mean, lower scoring game, and this is also an experienced defense. We talked about that in the summer. And the secondary, one of the best secondaries in the MAC, they're not giving up many points. They've also played under. These teams have a combined 5 unders thus far, 5-0 to the under, these two already this season. So in the mid 40s, defenses, and obviously Iowa State has that John Heacock defense. Very rugged, very rugged. This would be the best defense that Ohio faced as well. 44, mid 40s is a big mountain to climb for these two. So I'm definitely looking under, and let's stick with that with Iowa State for sure and Ohio until further notice.
All right. So Northwestern looked as bad as anybody could. It was a standalone game, too, in Rutgers on that Sunday of Labor Day weekend. And they were just a complete mess and score basically on the last play to avoid the shutout. But they come back with a nice win and win easily, very comfortably. Yes, I had to take those points. UTEP laying points on the road. Now they travel to Durham, and Duke is chucking right along after their Clemson win. They're favored by 19, though, in this game. This look ahead wasn't this much, but Duke 19 at home against Northwestern.
Yeah, you might want to put me into a padded cell for making this prediction here, but I actually think Northwestern's going to start offering some value here this year. But and a couple things here too about Duke. Yeah, we know Duke is good, and they've become sort of the team du jour for good reason after the Clemson win. Mike Elko, I mean, they're starting to talk him up. Maybe Duke's going to have trouble holding on to him. I mean, he is obviously a top flight coach, and Riley Leonard and the defense. Everything's better with Duke since Coach Cut. They moved him out. But this is a little different role now for Duke. I mean, Duke is now all of a sudden expected now to win these games big. And last week, Lafayette, it ended up 42-7, but that was a close game for a while, and they didn't cover the number. So this is a sort of a new role here for Duke. Let me say this about Northwestern. They did something very quietly in the summer after Pat Fitzgerald, after that fiasco, and they had to move him out. They brought in Skip Holtz as sort of an aide to David Braun, with the thought they wanted to bring in some experienced coach there to help run the thing administratively and really let Braun focus on what he was hired to do, which is to coordinate the defense. And Holtz has really done, from what we're hearing, he's really helped smooth that operation more. And and though Braun is the acting coach during the games, I mean, Skip Holtz is really sort of running things now, and that smoothed things out. And we saw last week, UTEP's not much, I know, but Northwestern didn't look bad. And by the way, their quarterback Ben Bryant, 6 years in college football. He started at Eastern Michigan, started at Cincinnati. Uh, you know. Played well, especially in the second half last week. He came out briefly last week, and Helinski, the quarterback last year, came in and threw an 85-yard touchdown pass. I think they're going to actually offer a little value because they're going to be so discounted like they are this week. So this is nearly 3 touchdowns. I don't think, and since the second half of the Rutgers game, Northwestern didn't look all that terrible. The defense looks like it's coming to play. Um, I think they might hang around here, and I think they might be the sort of team that's going to. So I'm going to take a lead with these guys that they're going to offer a little bit of value because they're so discounted. And the other way, Duke's playing with a premium now from the odds makers. I'm taking Northwestern.
Well, it certainly had value for them last weekend because everybody was forced to watch them on that standalone game as part of that triple-header on Sunday night that led into what San Jose State and Oregon State, and then LSU and Florida State. So otherwise, how many people would be watching the Northwestern Rutgers game? Very few. But still, I mean that affects the impact of them really burying their point spread value in that spot. So they certainly were of value last week, catching points, winning by 31. They were over 50% on third down conversions, +3 in the turnover battle, a complete whitewashing 38-7 of UTEP. All right, Cincinnati. We were waiting for the Cincinnati's great demise. I mean, they're a great team. They'd lose their coach and lost so much. But they just kind of chuck it along here, Brucey. And now they're 14-point favorites at home. Miami, Ohio visits town. Cincinnati against their in-state MAC rival coming into downtown Cincinnati.
Yeah, a couple things. This is a hot rivalry and one of the longest rivalries in the country. Got interrupted by the COVID year, but this is like one of the longest. It was the longest, I think, consecutive rivalry. They're only about 35 miles apart. Beautiful school. Miami O is a beautiful school. That's what a college campus should look like. My godson goes there. It's a great place. This is a long rivalry, and since it's an important game for Cincinnati too, they lost. They were losing some games back when Ben Roethlisberger was at Miami, but they haven't lost to the Red Hawks, as they're called now, since '05. So they'll be ready to play. But I am also not sleeping on Cincinnati. I think Scott Satterfield's got something cooking there. And by the way, Satterfield, I think he's a real top tier coach. Now, I'm not sure if he's going to do quite as well as Luke Fickell did here, but I think he's going to do better at Cincinnati than Fickell's going to do at Wisconsin. Look what he did at Appalachian State. He's the guy who really got the Mounties up and running. That program was great. He won 41 games over a 4-year span. That Louisville thing started off really very well. He completely turned it around from Petrino when he came in. COVID year slowed him down, though. That was the second year, and we know the vagaries of that season. And then that job interview with South Carolina, which is where he's from, that seemed to, it didn't sit well with the people at Louisville. And all of a sudden, that relationship got a little awkward. Like it shouldn't have. He's a quality coach, so I think this reset for him at Cincinnati is good. By the way, we talked about the portal being made for certain players. Emory Jones, the quarterback, is the sort of player who is made for the portal, or the portal was made for a player like him. Just think about it. I mean, 2 years ago, he was still at Florida. He was playing ahead of Anthony Richardson, who is now with the Colts as their starting quarterback. Transfers then, and then he's involved, and that thing unravels with Dan Mullen. Goes to Arizona State. Unfortunately, that's where that thing unravels with Herm Edwards last year. Turns into a mess. He gets one more shot, transfers to Cincinnati. So it's his third school in 3 years. He is performing. He's been responsible for 9 TDs already. And by the way, that was a nice win last week at Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's a tough place to play, and it was a little easier than that score indicated.
Yeah.
Satterfield can coach. And I'm not sure Miami's had a lot of trouble in this series in recent years. Cincinnati's really been dominating, like we said, and we saw the Miami down at Miami, Florida, a couple of weeks ago, really get blown off the field. I think Cincinnati is at a pretty high level, and this price looks awfully fair to me. So I'm going to lay it with the Bearcats there. I keep an eye on these guys. I like Satterfield a lot, and I think these guys are flying a little bit under the radar.
All right, let's move on to Ole Miss Georgia Tech. This is a rematch of the game in Atlanta last year, where Ole Miss just torched the Yellow Jackets and really put the spotlight on Collins. And well, once they then when they lost their next one, they pulled the plug on him. But look deeper into this Ole Miss Tulane game, and I watched it very closely because we got word that Pratt did not practice all week, and then he was not going to play. And the line shot up from like 7.5 all the way up to 13. Crazy scoop and score cover on the late line. And in the original line, it took a 56-yard field goal to cover it. But look at it. First downs, 19-18 Tulane. Total yards, 363 to 342 Ole Miss. And you had Tulane had one more turnover and three more fourth down attempt failures. Those are turnovers. This is a big-time misleading score. It's one of my handicapping angles. It may lead to a bigger number here with Ole Miss, but at 18.5. I'm not crazy about Jackson Dart. I am really surprised about Spencer Sanders coming in, Walker Howard coming in from Oklahoma State and LSU, and Dart not really being any improved and still having a job, Bruce.
Yeah, and I think you're right. And I'd keep an eye on this into October because if Dart stumbles a little bit, I kind of think Lane will have a short leash on him, but we'll see. Also, last week, Jimmy, Ole Miss didn't run the football that well. That's been their real bread and butter.
Tulane controlled the line of scrimmage,
They did.
or at least stalemate, even,
Sure,
yeah.
held their own, and I think Ole Miss is a little bit vulnerable here. Now, the other thing here, everything comes back to Jimbo. I know I said I wouldn't be teasing him, but have you seen Haynes King perform thus far for Georgia Tech? It's only 2 games. He doesn't look the same quarterback he was at Texas A&M. He looks a lot better. Now, I do know. I mean, 2 years ago, he was supposed to be the savior at College Station, but he did hurt his knee in that first game against Colorado 2 years ago. He did come back last year, so maybe there's still some residue from the knee injury the previous year. He looks a lot better than he did for Jimbo. In fact, I think he looks better than Connor Wiegman does for Jimbo right now. So, one, why couldn't Jimbo get him to play better? And two, uh, why'd he let him go in the portal? He's good. And actually, I think he's playing better than Sims did last year for Georgia Tech.
It's not
These
saying a
guys,
whole lot, though.
you're right. You're right.
Sims.
Sims this year for sure. Brent Key, think about it last year. I mean, his first game in there, they go into Pitt and win. He won in North Carolina later in the year.
Yeah.
He's in. I mean, they've sort of stumbled into. I know he wasn't their first choice to be the permanent head coach, but they quickly he was a good fallback option. They are playing hard for this guy. They're very organized. This is too many points, and with Haynes King putting up some numbers the way he is, I think Georgia Tech's going to hang within this spread. I really do.
All right, Georgia Tech plus the 18.5 against Ole Miss. I think Connor Regman's going to be okay at A&M. He's not their problem. I mean, right now. So we'll see.
Yep.
I thought they were going to be improved. They are improved at quarterback, but you're right. Jimbo Fisher, who built a reputation on being a quarterback whisperer, has had a long run of some struggles now with a lot of quarterbacks. All right, Jersey, it's about time. It took you 3 weeks, a couple of games, but you're on the prime bandwagon. That's right. I mean, what are you, sidelined this week at Boulder, huh? Next to the Wu-Tang Crew and Michael Irvin and the whole bit. But, I mean, how about the scene, though, in Boulder? I mean, they rushed the field. It was cool, man. It was cool. Colorado now 24 over a Colorado State and a little bit of a look-ahead spot. It's look-ahead week this week with Florida State going to Clemson next week, Ohio State going to Notre Dame, and Colorado going to Eugene to take on Oregon. It's a big number, but not scaring you away.
No, and I ended up making releases on Colorado last weekend after we did our podcast. I took a look at it and said, I'm just going to ride these guys. At this stage with them, I don't think look ahead applies to Colorado. I mean, the look ahead for them is the next game. This is still so exciting for them and for this new team. And it's like in business and things, a new thing comes along and you talk about proof of concept. The TCU game was proof of concept there, and they're getting better from that. That was dominant last week against Nebraska. And I really think Shadur Sanders and maybe even Travis Hunter are going to get in the Heisman conversation really soon. Sanders is already there, and maybe you should put Hunter in there as well. I mean, Hunter is since Dion, we haven't seen a guy go two ways like this. And Sanders is something else, but they're hungry too. Last week, I mean, Dion, he was still throwing up 4 touchdowns on Nebraska in the fourth quarter. He's still throwing. I mean, they're gleefully running up scores, and maybe it's because Dion isn't thinking he's going to be at Colorado too long. I don't know. He doesn't have to worry about retribution. The other end here, I mean, Colorado State still hasn't improved too much. I mean, they were really outclassed by Washington State in the opening game,
Yeah.
and that got a little crazy the fourth quarter. There was a lot more scoring than we thought. That was an under that we liked that ended up going over. But the offense really, and a couple of fluky plays in the fourth quarter, they were torched by Washington State. And there's no way I think Dion's going to take his foot off the accelerator here. Every week is a celebration for these guys, and they've got them on national TV. Again, that's kind of rare for Colorado State, but here you go for Colorado. I'm going to just ride them, Jimmy. I think there is something really going on there. They're in the rankings right now, and that's the other thing, though. It doesn't seem like Dion pulls his foot off the accelerator either. These guys are gleefully running up scores, and this is a team they will do it against. They don't want to give their in-state rival any room to breathe here. So I'm on the Buffs.
Late in the game against Nebraska, they were running their offense. They didn't care what the score was. They were
Right.
running their offense. They tacked on another score with no problem. So if you look at this big number, it's something to monitor. When we look at coaches like Mark Stoops, we look at James Franklin, Dabo Sweeney did it last year on Monday night running tempo against the Georgia Tech. So yeah, and how about look ahead. They're center stage again. ESPN, 10 o'clock Eastern. It's a little late, but it is, really prime, a big part of the main stage for them on their third straight week. So Colorado minus the 24. Don't forget to try and get involved on the squares. Single game parlay, only a $10 bet will get you a square and a chance to win up to $10,000 in free play. It's our squares game available right now wherever you make your BetRivers bets. For Bruce Marshall from VegasInsider.com, CBS Sports Lot, BAMSports.net, I'm Jimmy Ott here on the Sports Bettor's Paradise on the BetRivers Network.